decent tug. That's nice and solid. Okay, so that's orange there, grey there, and now we can move on to the... There's only a few wires left now. We've got brown, blue, and that's it. All the rest are connected. Okay, so let's move on to the next bit. Hey guys, Westy here. Okay, we're going to just give a summary of the flight mode setup that I set up on the DX7SE. If you just go and have a look over here, we've got the flight mode control over here. When you flip it over, it's obviously on the left, but in your hands. I just wanted to show you which wire, the blue wire, gets plugged into here. And if you have a look here, that's the blue wire there, and I've got that into the bottom pad down here. Okay, now on the actual, this is for setting up for heli mode only. Okay, so now on the other side we've got the throttle hold switch, and I've got the brown cable connected into the top pad like so. Okay, and that's the correct way to do it on the DX7SE. Okay, we've got all of our eight of our 9 wires connected. The green wire we don't need, so I'll just snip that off. Okay, well, the only thing left to do now is to wait for our glue gun to heat up, and we've got our tape wrapped around our motor, our vibrating motor, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the hot glue gun down, and actually, so I'm going to scratch into the surface here first, and here, so it's got something solid to stick to. So just give it a good scratch so that it's going to adhere to it. Right, and then I'm going to put my motor once this thing heats up. Okay, we're going to start gluing now. So I'm just going to put a dab in here first while it's hot, and then I'm going to wait for that to go off, and then glue gun the top of it. Okay, so we'll let that cool down, and I'll put another dab on the wires to get it all secured in there. I'm going to put another dab on the wires here just to get it secured properly. And we'll let that go off. Once that's dried, we can remove the tape on the end of the motor, and we can test it. That glue should have pretty much set by now, so I'm just going to take the vibrating insulation tape off the vibrating head like so. Yeah, that's nice and firm in there, that's good. Right, and I'm just going to put it back together again. I'm going to tidy up all these wires in the unit itself, so that when I put this board back on, make sure you put your fuse back in, of course, in here. I've got my double-sided tape on the, I've got them mounted on here, both of them there, 1, 2, and then I'm going to actually carefully weave my, I've got to keep this satellite aerial cable out of the way so that I can put that in. but I'm going to actually tuck all these in here, all these other wires, so that when I put the pad down here it's not going to actually lock up anything, and also keep it away from things so that it doesn't push any wires into the gimbals. And so I'll just put these 4 screws on and we'll get back. I've got the module panel on, and I've carefully made sure all the wires are all tucked out of the way so they're not bound up in there. I've just got to put the aerial cable on. That's it, and tuck it up out of the way. So just make sure when you do put the top cover back on, because we've got all these wires here over this side that we've just put in for the vibrating motor, and we've also got this black wire here that we've put on for the battery connection, and there's also 2 wires at the front, or actually there's quite a few wires at the front. So you want to make sure that they're not going to be in the way of any of the mounting screws when you put it in, otherwise you'll crush the wire. So you're very careful of that. So make sure, and even when you're putting it all in carefully on top of itself, you want to kind of like hover underneath it. Hover underneath it so you can actually, when you lift it up over the top carefully, you can tuck your wires in where you need them to go, and make sure they don't bind up on anything. Okay, little black one here isn't getting, it's kind of like in the way, so make sure your switch is all in, and then carefully lower it over the top, and don't force it down, because you want to make sure you're not crushing any wires. So that all feels good to me. Doesn't feel like I'm crushing any wires at all, because you don't want to get to the point where you are crushing wires and then something doesn't work because you've destroyed it. So I'm just going to nip 2 of these up while it's held there. This one over here. So like I said, make sure you put your fuse in. Now we can come up and get a closer shot here. So now we can just do the last 4 screws. You don't have to actually do these up really tight. You basically just screw them in and nip it up. Otherwise you'll strip the mating face inside the unit, and you'll have to muck around filling them up and redoing them. So you don't have to go over the top. Put these last 2 in the end here. So I'll get those done up and we'll be right back. Now I've got my little purple wire connected into here, just there, and then just above that I've got the white wire connected. And that's connected into the increase side, on that side of the increase one. And then you've got your earth wire over here on the actual battery side where the battery plugs into the case. I've got a black wire, this bottom rail here is a negative. I've got my black wire from the AV unit connected into there. It's just a summary, guys. I've got my motor hot glued into there so it's clear and free of the plastic. And those 2 wires go back into the controller, which is mounted underneath this board here on double-sided tape. And then all the other wires are actually underneath that board, which I showed in my other videos. And make sure you put your aerial back on your antenna wire. Just here. That grey one has to be in properly, otherwise if it flicks off you're going to be in trouble when you're flying out there and lose control. Okay, so that's pretty much the summary, and just be careful. I've got most of my wires put in underneath this unit here, but I've got these four here. There's two red, the yellow and red, the white and purple, and the black. I've got them set kind of carefully woven in here so that it's not going to cause any hassles when I put it all together. Okay, so then when you put it back together again, you just carefully lift the unit up and carefully feed, well, you're looking underneath. I'm actually looking underneath, although you can't see that, and then carefully guide the wires into position so that they're not going to be touching anything, and then sit your controller down carefully, and you want to look around the outsides and make sure that you haven't got any wires sticking out the side, or it's not hard to press down because you don't want to break it. So then just pop your 6 screws back in. These top ones are tricky with my little bracket on here, but I just go in like so. So you screw them up and you're ready to test.